Welcome to the Crush It in Sales podcast. I'm your host, Melinda Van Fleet. This podcast focuses on the intersection of sales, leadership, and personal development. Now let's get ready to dig in and crush it. Welcome everyone to the Crush It in Sales podcast. I am super excited to have a special guest, Susan McCuistion, on the podcast today. She has already graced our podcast before on the Good Karma Success Coach podcast, episode 71, where we talked about Heartmath, and the title of that podcast is called Connecting to Our Hearts and to Others. And this week, we're going to have kind of her other side. She's similar to me. Like, we both have like a spiritual connection side, and then we have our business side, and we believe in how powerful it is when you are aware of both of those. So Susan is also a friend, and she is who introduced me to Maggie Mongan, who is the guru behind the Brilliant Breakthroughs for the Small Business Owner book series that I have been talking about and posting about. And Susan is also a co-author in this year's series as well, which is volume 4. And the title of her chapter is called The Hidden Cost of Doing Business. And I love this chapter. So I'm going to kick it off to Susan. Welcome, welcome. Please introduce yourself and give a little background.
All right. Thank you so much, Melinda, for having me on here. Let's see, my background. I have been doing a diversity and inclusion work for over 20 years now. And I know we're going to talk a little bit later about compassionate diversity, so I'll save that explanation. But I work with anywhere from small to large organizations, just helping them understand how diversity and inclusion affect their business. So I coach leaders to understand how their approach towards cultural commonalities and differences helps them lead better. I also work with a specific tool called the Intercultural Development Inventory that helps folks understand where they are in terms of their learning around this. And I also love my favorite thing to do actually is to design and facilitate different workshops as well as speak to large groups around diversity and inclusion and related issues to that field, sorry, related issues. So things like, some of the hot topics around unconscious bias and inclusion and things like that. But mostly what I love to do is help organizations understand how they can build more inclusive and resilient workplaces through compassion. And so I have a particular focus on compassion that's very different than the way other folks in my field look at diversity and inclusion.
Yeah. And thank you for mentioning, I went, oh my God, I forgot to say just the very basic that you're a best-selling author, you're a business coach and consultant, and a professional speaker. And that's the funniest part is we were laughing prior to the podcast. It'll be 2 years pretty soon that we have known each other, and we met through a speaking course. So I forgot all that. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Thank you.
It's so funny when you talk to somebody you know so well,
yes.
Right? It's like, oh, I know all that. Of course, everybody else would, right?
Yeah, everyone else can read my mind. Don't they know that?
Yeah, right.
We do all these things, we talk to each other and this and that. So yeah. So hopefully out there, someone feels me. So I try to be relatable. There you go.
It's all about authenticity.
Yes, there you go. Yes. And that is sometimes my good stuff and the bad stuff. It all goes into that authenticity bucket. So
That's right.
So why don't you explain as best as you can, because I know it's very wide. How would you explain to the audience like your definition of compassionate diversity?
Yeah, so I came up with compassionate diversity. I walked around for quite a few years with 3 intersecting circles. And so one thing people don't know about me, my education's actually in mathematics. So I've got 8 years of college mathematics behind me. And I'm very interested in science. Everything I do is supported by research and science. And so that was one of those circles. The other circle was spirituality, as you had mentioned in the beginning, right? That's part of our connection as well. So I love to also research science and spirituality. And the third circle was culture. And that's because I am fascinated in learning about how people view the world, different perspectives, and helping them come together, to build bridges and understanding, to communicate better, to work better as teams. So that's my work in diversity and inclusion. So these three intersecting circles, the science, the spirituality, and the culture. And I walked around with that for a number of years. And I said, if I ever figure out what's in the middle of that, that is going to be my work. And a couple of years ago, I woke up and it was compassionate diversity. And that's when compassionate diversity was born. So I build in for compassionate diversity. I build in a lot of different, I take from a lot of different areas of study. I've already mentioned the science, the spirituality. I love how the brain works. So that gets built in. Emotional intelligence, intercultural communication. And so all of this comes together. I consider myself very much an integrator. And so all these come together and get integrated into compassionate diversity.
Beautiful. I love that. So one of the things we've talked about, and you mentioned in your chapter, is about treating people the way that they want to be treated. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think that's so important.
Yeah. One of the things we do, I mentioned a developmental model that I work with. One of the things that we're often taught is to treat other people like I want to be treated. And in that developmental model I work with, that's called minimization, where we minimize the differences. And certainly nothing's wrong with that, right? Because the things that we have in common, they're how we connect. It's how we build relationship. It's how we build shared meaning. And the differences, those are the things that help us innovate, right? They help us to think about things differently. If, as you're selling to different groups of people, what motivates them, right? Mm-hmm. And so when we treat other people like I want to be treated, we're assuming that they're just like us, but not everybody is. Right. So quick example, the commonality, respect. We all want to be respected, right? I've got no problem saying that. Yeah. And yet how we show respect might be very different from person to person. So example, my husband knows I use this example, so it's okay. But he was born and raised in Montgomery, Alabama, right? To a military family, right? Mm-hmm. So for him, the behavior of respect is to say yes, sir, and yes, ma'am. Right? Constantly. I mean, it is instant out of his mouth. I can be upstairs and I hear him downstairs saying, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. And I think, oh, must be on the phone with his dad, right? It's a given. It's a given. Well, we live in the Midwest now. And for a while, he reported to a woman who was only 5 years older than him, born and raised here in the Midwest. Yeah, you know where I'm going, right?
I feel this. Yes.
Ask him to do something and he would say, yes, ma'am, right? So all of a sudden, this exact same thing that he thought was respectful was being interpreted as disrespect. And that's where the culture part comes in. Culture is the groups of people that influence our beliefs, values, and behaviors. And so while we share values, the way that we're taught to behave around those values is very different. And it's that behavior. We have certain expectations around behavior because of our culture, and other people act differently because of their culture. Now, all of a sudden, there's conflict.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that example is so spot on. That's so funny you picked that, because that, coming from the South Side of Chicago, is one of my biggest pet peeves when someone ma'ams me. I call it mamming me. Right. I am not old.
Right, exactly.
So, and then people be like, oh, I'm from the South, or military. And I'm like, please don't ma'am me. Like, not cool. But even, I remember, you're bringing back such a flood of memories. I remember I lived in New York City and was a buyer for Saks Fifth Avenue. And in New York City, it's very common, for air kissing,
yes.
Somebody, you air kiss. Hugging is common as well. Shaking hands is always common for the most part, let's say. And then when I moved to Minneapolis, if I had a vendor meeting, and often the vendors were from New York City, and someone on my team was with me, they were very uncomfortable. They were,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, you know what? And it's an air kiss. Like it's, and once in a while someone kind of kisses you, but like, it's just their culture.
Right.
Like it's a New York City thing. People air kiss, I don't know, especially the Jewish culture air kisses. Like it's just common. So I never thought anything of it until my team started surfacing to me that they were uncomfortable sometimes. So it's interesting. Yeah. Wow. So you have a whole process that you have put together, and I would love for you to walk through it. It's called the Resilience Profitability Process, RPP. And I think it's amazing. And I would love for you to share that.
Thanks. Sure. So a couple things before we get into this. There are a few ground rules. And the first is that all perspectives are valid, even if you don't agree with them. Right. And that's one of the hardest things, I think, especially now when we think about all the polarization going on in our world. But the fact of the matter is we all do come to different viewpoints through our life experiences, through our cultures. And so we have to understand that. I don't have to agree with you to accept that's your perspective, right?
Yeah.
And then as we move through this process, which is really about how do we have more mindful and intelligent conversations with folks, as we move through this, our focus really is to understand and inform. We may not, unfortunately, for some, get to resolution in a first conversation. It's very common. And I think so many times we want to tell, okay, wait a minute, step back. Your focus is to understand and inform. And the other thing is it's okay to say you don't know. I think we live in this space where, saying I don't know means that we're stupid or we don't know what we're doing. And we have to have that vulnerability and authenticity to be willing to say, I don't know. Can I get back to you on that? And make sure that we do get back. So that's kind of the ground rules of it. And then from there, there's these three, what I call the three C's: the comprehension, connection, and collaboration. And so really the comprehension section, this first section is about understanding or building on our emotional awareness. So our emotions are internal guidance system. And so if we're kind of feeling punched in the gut, somebody says something and we're feeling punched in the gut, we have to have the wherewithal to take a step back and say, okay, wait a minute. I feel frustrated because something is not in alignment with my beliefs, values, or expectations. Let me take a step back and think about that for a minute, right? If we're feeling good, it means things are going along the way that we believe they should be. If we're not, they aren't, right? And so just using that emotional intelligence, is this going the way I want? Or am I feeling kind of punch in the gut? When we get that punch in the gut feeling, rather than arguing, saying, okay, wait a minute, what's not going according to my expectations? So that's really that first comprehension, understanding myself first. And now connection is, now I'm starting to build in other people's perspectives. This is where we're going to start to have conversations about things. And remember, we're not necessarily trying to solve anything at this stage, but we do want to start to understand, are we in or out of alignment with our beliefs, values, and expectations? And then what about the other person? What are their beliefs, values, and expectations? Where do they stand on that? And now this is where we start to have, as I mentioned, these conversations. And what we want to do, rather than telling people, we want to start asking questions. Ask more questions. Try not to defend your position. And simple questions like, that's interesting, Melinda. Can you tell me more about that? What else do you like me to know about this? Right? And so really digging in and getting underneath, and do your best to listen and resist every urge to refute or defend your position. Right? And I think that's the hardest part as we're having these conversations.
Yes.
And then the last step, really collaboration. Now that we've got this information, we understand how we felt, how we're feeling, how the others are feeling, other person's feeling. Where are we in or out of alignment with our beliefs, values, or expectations? Then we can start to come to a decision? How do we take an appropriate action through collaboration? And so there's a couple things that we have to remember in collaboration. There really are only two outcomes. The first is change, and the second is no change. And I think sometimes we forget status quo may be okay. Now that we've got a better understanding of each other and where we're at, no change is okay. We can just move forward. But if there is change, that means that we might have to, maybe create a new process or change something within our system, or think about the way that we're approaching a customer sale or a product a little bit differently, or a team member. And so this is the changes where we really start to think about different conversations, different processes, and learning different tools. So that's kind of it in a really fast nutshell.
It's really great that you said that. Just makes me think, and it's so common sense, but not really, if that makes sense. That not everything has to change. You're right. Sometimes it's just coming to an understanding, and it's not necessary to change. It's not needed. And I think that's really important, because I do believe that a common misconception is that people think, I've got to make some changes with, whether it's a process or a relationship. So that's really okay. And I learned this years ago, that it was okay to say, I don't know. So I'm circling back to your ground rules.
Yeah.
I think your ground rules are just ground rules for life. It should just be everyone should have these postered on your door, Because when you learn to say, I don't know, it just takes the pressure off. It's so incredible.
Yeah. And I think so many people are afraid to do that. I had to learn that years ago. I mentioned with my math classes. So when I was a grad student in math, I had independent teaching responsibilities for undergrad math classes. And, for me, I was teaching basic math and algebra. And I had to get into that perspective again. For me, algebra was just I didn't even think about it anymore. And I had to get into a perspective of, okay, I'm a new learner in algebra. What do I need? What kind of information do I need? What's going to be most helpful? So really, when we talk about diversity inclusion, it is about shifting perspectives and stepping into that other person's shoes. And as a result of that, there were sometimes some questions that came that, think everybody has a different perspective, right? They were just some really good questions about maybe the way an equation was done or a theorem was written that I had never even really considered. I just took it for granted. Mm-hmm. And me being curious, I wanted to know. And so I'd have to say, I don't know, I'll get back to you. And it was really fun. I enjoy learning. So it was really fun for me to learn and to dig into that stuff. But that's really where I got over the, I don't know. I'm just going to say it. I don't know.
I don't know. If everyone just practiced that a little bit today, just say, I don't know. Too, it also stops any potential argument, if you think about it, because what's the other person going to say to you? If they call you an idiot for not knowing, then that's on them. They're, they've got to do some look in the mirror. But for the most part, everyone just go, oh, okay. It would be fun.
Yeah. So it does relieve a lot of pressure, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. And it's funny. I love number 1 too, because of the points. All perspectives are valid even if you don't agree with them. I just want to read it directly to get the vibe, because I've always looked at things like art, and I'll say that, if you go to the museum or an art gallery, there's 2 paintings and you're with a friend, one of your friends going to like that one has more pink, and your other friend's going to like that one has more green. It's just, the world is different. We're all different people, and we're all allowed to have our own perspective on things, and that's okay. It's all good. So
exactly.
How boring would it be if we all agreed with each other, right?
Right. I mean, that's the beauty.
We could go down a whole rabbit hole there, but
I know, right? Let's just stop that there. Yeah, because we could.
But I mean, it just makes life more interesting.
Yeah.
If there's all different viewpoints and opinions and ways to look at things, and everyone has different talents. I mean, there's so many different perspectives on that topic.
Yeah.
If we all did the same thing, oh my gosh, that would be crazy. So
yeah. We're all needed. All of our talents are needed.
Exactly. All of our talents are needed. That is fantastic. So I love what you shared. And I know we're kind of getting tight on time. So I wanted to ask you just a really funsy question. Is that okay?
Oh, okay.
So just hope you're sitting down.
I'll try to make it a funsy answer.
This is how I was feeling today. I was like,
okay.
I just want to have like a good vibe conversation with my friend Susan. So here's my question, and I'm going to see if I got it right. My what I think you might answer, but we'll see.
Okay.
If you could do one fun thing right now, like what would you do? Your top of mind fun thing that you would do right
are
now.
you serious? I would go to Disney.
Yes, I got it right. You'd be on that plane so fast.
Would. And we just canceled our third trip this year because of this dang pandemic, and I'm jonesing for Disney.
Oh my God. The third attempt you've tried to get down here?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm hoping that, because I know people are getting let in, so I just don't know all the scoop.
Yeah. I just think we were just kind of feeling with the cool air and all that coming in, and is it going to be second wave, and just not feeling entirely comfortable. But I've been keeping it all. A number of our favorite entertainers at Downtown Disney have been doing live Facebook live sessions and stuff. So I kind of like keep that excitement alive as I get to watch some of my friends perform. So,
aw, that's cool. And then you can see Mickey and Minnie and Donald and and all of that. So, well, I love this. Thank you so much. Is there some information you'd love to share with the audience of how they can reach out to you and connect?
Yeah. Oh, thanks for that. Yeah. My website is my name. I think we'll post it. Post it on the site. It's just easier than me trying to spell it because it is a little tricky at the end there. There are two I's involved. So SusanMcCuistion.com. And I've got, there's a lot of information out there about how you can connect with me, whether it is through the, if you're interested in building resilience on that personal side or within the organization. And then another one of the documents I've got out there, I've got a download of 5 diversity myths. So in that, I do talk about things like, what is diversity, and who's included and who's excluded, and ideas like that. So I've got 5 of the biggest myths of diversity out there if anybody's interested in finding out more.
Awesome. Cool. I will put that in the show notes. And again, please feel free to check out our other podcast together, which is on the Good Karma Success Coach podcast, episode 71. I will also put that in the show notes. And then, drumroll, November 11th. Woo!
Yes, the book.
It's the book. Yes. So Brilliant Breakthroughs for the Small Business Owner releases on November 11th, lucky angel numbers. And we are all super excited. And again, Susan is a co-author with my husband, Ryan, and I. And we're really looking forward to this fun adventure. It's been really great so far.
Yeah, it has. And there's a lot of great authors. I know we're getting time to connect with each of the authors. And it's just, there's going to be a lot of good information in there for folks.
It's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Susan, for being on the podcast. I really appreciate you as always. Thank you.
Thank you, Melinda. Take care.